My ex-wife, who cheated and abandoned our family years ago, shows up at my door with another man's kid, wanting to be a family again. I slammed the door in her face. Some context here. My ex-wife Angela, 36, and I, 37 male, had met when we were in our mid-20s. When I was around 24, we were working at the same firm, and that's how we met. After being in a relationship for 2 years, we got married, and within 3 years of our marriage, we had 2 daughters, now 9 and 7 years old. The second pregnancy was unexpected, and she wasn't happy about it, but she didn't terminate it, even though I had told her that it would be okay with me if she did, since I didn't want to put her through anything that she didn't want. After our first daughter, things were still great between us, and we were as in love as we could be. But that changed after the second pregnancy. She became really moody and irritable and constantly picked on me or our eldest, but I just figured that this was because of all the hormones and stuff, and tried to make my peace with this new version of Angela. We thought that this would change after a while, but things just got progressively worse, and my daughter and I learned to walk on eggshells around her. I was taking care of everything, even though she was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. She had quit her job of her own volition after our first kid, and did all the work around the house along with taking care of our eldest, while I worked until she got pregnant for a second time. We had to hire a housekeeper while she was pregnant because she said that she was too tired to do the work around the house along with looking after our kids. I agreed, even though it was slightly out of our budget since I wasn't earning enough at the time. I agreed to hire a housekeeper because I didn't want to inconvenience Angela, especially while she was pregnant. I assumed that she would return to looking after the house and kids during the day after our second daughter was born. Also, let me just make it clear that I wasn't one of those husbands who didn't do anything around the house after coming back from work. I did whatever I could to help out, even though I used to be exhausted from working. After she gave birth to our younger daughter, I thought that she would take a few months, but then she would bounce back and we could go back to our normal lives. But several months passed and she showed no signs of changing. She remained just as cranky and irritable and refused to do any work around the house. She would just sit at home all day and watch television. She didn't even play with the kids or anything and would pay our neighbor to take them out to the park occasionally. I don't mean to sound resentful, but I did feel that way because I was slogging at work day and night, and she wouldn't even do the bare minimum at home. It was also proving quite expensive for me to pay for a housekeeper to do all the cooking, cleaning, and other miscellaneous household chores. I had to take care of all the other expenses as well, and I wanted to save money for our daughter's future too. That was becoming almost impossible because Angela refused to help me out in any way. So after almost 6 months since our younger daughter's birth, I decided that we couldn't go on like this, and I had to talk to Angela. I knew that this was going to be a difficult discussion, so I asked my parents to watch our daughters for one day, and they agreed. That day I sat Angela down and I told her that I knew she was tired after 2 pregnancies, but I needed her to help me out here and work with me. I explained to her that having a housekeeper was becoming too expensive for us, and I needed her to honor her word and go back to doing at least some of the household chores so we could renegotiate and lower the housekeeper's salary and save some money. She was opposed to the idea and said no to it instantly because she said that she was too busy watching the kids to do any of the work around the house and that I should start earning more instead of making up excuses and blaming her for my financial condition. I tried to tell her that I was doing my best already, but she had to do her best as well if we wanted to make this marriage work. I also brought up how she wasn't really looking after the kids because as far as I knew, she would just let them watch television with her, and they would sit with her for hours while she watched tacky reality TV. This is what the housekeeper had once mentioned to me conversationally. I soon realized that bringing that up was a huge mistake because she flared up and accused me of spying on her through the housekeeper. She went on a tirade against me after that and said that she was not going to stand this anymore, that she was done being pushed around by me and being forced to do all the work while I did nothing except sit at a desk for a few hours every day. She then told me that this was my fault, that I couldn't afford to have a housekeeper, and that it was a shame that I had to beg her to help me out, since I was supposed to be the man of the house. It was all really illogical, and she was just grasping at straws to somehow make it seem like there was nothing wrong with her not doing anything all day, and I was the crazy one for expecting her to actually contribute and pull her weight around the house. We ended up getting into a massive fight, and she called me a loser who couldn't afford to be with a woman like her anyway, and I retaliated by calling her a lazy cow who had already failed at being a good mother, given how scared our eldest daughter was of her, and now she was failing at being a wife as well. That remark really got to her, and she shoved me really hard. I lost my balance and fell back on the coffee table very hard, shattering the glass and hurting myself. I had to be rushed to the ER, and she kept apologizing to me and crying throughout. Luckily, it was just my back that was hurt, and it was all just surface-level injuries, but I could have seriously hurt myself, and I didn't trust Angela anymore. I told her that she had to move out because I didn't trust her around the kids, since there was no telling when she might lose her temper around them and end up hurting them as well. I told my parents to take care of our daughters until Angela was gone, and for a week she kept protesting and said that she would never let this happen again. But I just didn't trust her anymore. I almost filed for a divorce, but she begged me to give her a chance. And by the end of the week, we had come to the conclusion that she was going to go live with her parents for some time and undergo therapy. Only when she had been given a clean bill by a medical professional would I allow her to move back in with us. There was obviously something very wrong with her, because happy people don't act that way, but she was willing to work on it and get better. I also didn't want my daughters to grow up without their mother, so I agreed not to get divorced just then and give our marriage a second shot. We were also getting marriage counseling while we were living separately, but eventually it all turned out to be useless because she ended up cheating on me. My parents had moved in with me to help out with my daughters while Angela was living with her parents. We went to marriage counseling sessions weekly, and things seemed to be getting better for a while. I was also in touch with her therapist, who told me that she had been suffering from postpartum depression, but she was getting better. One of her symptoms had been anger issues, which she didn't have before, but it got way out of control when she shoved me, and that was a wake-up call for both of us. This went on for almost a year, and around the 6-month mark, I even allowed her to visit our daughters under my supervision. She was slowly becoming her old self again, and I was glad to see that it finally felt like our situation was improving and we could actually make it work. But then, all of a sudden, she stopped coming to our counseling sessions without any explanation. She also stopped responding to me, but I knew that she was making progress since her therapist kept me updated. It didn't make sense to me, and for weeks I kept trying to talk to her, but she would just blow me off and say that she wanted some time to herself. Finally, after almost 3 months of her avoiding me, I decided to pay her a visit to her parents' place. I hadn't done that earlier because her parents didn't like me and blamed me because they believed that I was the one who had driven their daughter crazy and made her act out like that. So she had told me that it would be better if I didn't visit her while she was living with them, since that would just lead to a lot of drama. And that's definitely the last thing that we needed. But I broke that rule and visited them anyway, since she had been acting distant and blowing off counseling sessions. Even when she would show up occasionally, she would seem uninterested. I just couldn't make sense of it. When I tried to talk to her in person, on the phone, or even on text, she would tell me that it was all fine, but I could make out from her behavior that there was certainly something that she was hiding from me. The day that I showed up at her parents' house, I expected her to be at home, but she wasn't there. When I asked her parents where she was, they told me that they weren't allowed to tell me and slammed the door shut in my face. I could tell that they were enjoying this, and I had a bad feeling about it, so I decided to call Angela while standing in front of her parents' house. I tried calling her several times, but she didn't pick up, and I was getting more and more paranoid by the second. So I decided to sneak around the house and somehow get inside by myself. I went around to the backyard because I knew that her parents usually kept the kitchen door open. But I didn't even need to go that far because I spotted Angela sitting on the swing that her parents had in their backyard. The bad news was that she was sitting with her back to me because she was making out with a man that I didn't recognize. It's been a long time since I saw them, but it's imprinted in my brain because it was the most horrible moment of my life, and I haven't been able to forget it even today. The guy that she was making out with drew back as soon as he saw me, and by the time Angela turned around, I had already started walking back to my car. She caught up with me and tried to stop me, but I wasn't hearing anything that she was saying because I was in shock. She tried to grab me, but I shook her off and told her not to touch me, so she didn't. I went back to my car and started driving back home. I blocked her everywhere as soon as I got home so she wouldn't have a chance to explain, and told my parents that I wanted them to look for a lawyer for me and inform them of what I had just witnessed when I visited Angela's parents' house. I didn't see her or hear from her until we had to meet with the court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. I had pretty much turned into a robot by that point and was just functioning for the sake of my daughters, but I had completely shut down emotionally. I didn't feel anything, even when I found out that Angela was terminating her parental rights because she had made up her mind that she didn't want to be with us anymore, that she wanted to be with the guy, let's call him Sean, that I saw her with the other day. He was her childhood friend, and while they had grown apart after high school ended, They had reconnected when she moved back in with her parents, and she had apparently fallen in love with him. Her parents also supported this, which is probably why they had been right about her making out with him in their backyard, despite being a married woman with 2 kids. Apparently, they had always wanted her to end up with Sean, and they were happy that Angela was finally choosing herself and her own happiness, as if she had ever been capable of doing anything other than that. The divorce was a long process because even though she had been cheating on me, she still wanted to qualify for alimony. It took us a while, but my lawyer and I fought hard and made sure that she didn't get anything in the divorce because it was all rightfully mine, since I had been the one paying for everything for so long, while she did nothing but watch television at home. It has been 5 years since the divorce finally came through, and we succeeded in our goal to make sure that she walked away with nothing. The months in which I was dealing with the divorce were some of the hardest times for me, but I knew that I couldn't break because I had to look after my daughters since they had nobody except for me. My parents were obviously really helpful and supportive, and I can't ever thank them enough for being there for me throughout while I juggled work and taking care of my kids. It has been 5 years since, and even though back then the divorce seemed like the worst thing that could possibly happen to me, I'm thankful for it now, because I don't think I would have been in the place that I am today had it not been for my decision to leave Angela. Life has really treated me well since then, and I'm in a much better place now, in every respect. We have since moved into a bigger house because I get paid better now, and I don't have to spend money on anyone apart from myself and my daughters. My parents live close by and drop in from time to time as well. I have friends who love me, and my daughters are as happy as can be. That's all that a man needs, and I'm so thankful to the universe that it's all going well for me now. Or it was until Angela showed up again a few days ago. The kids were at school, and I was just about to leave for work when I opened the door. The doorbell rang, and Ang was standing outside with a boy beside her. The boy couldn't have been older than 3 or 4 years old, and I knew that this had to be Angela's son. I was taken by surprise when I saw her standing outside my door, and was still trying to process it when she started crying and said that she was here to apologize and make things right with me. She told me that she was finally ready to be a family again, and give our marriage another chance. I couldn't believe that she was back here after all these years, and now she wanted to give our marriage another chance, like it was up to her to make that decision. Within a split second, I made up my mind and decided to shut the door and turn her away, because I didn't want to get into whatever this was. But before that, I told her that this was not her family anymore. I had stopped being her husband the day she cheated on me with Sean. The divorce was just a legal obligation, and she herself had given up custody of her daughters, so now she had no right to refer to us as her family. After I said that, I shut the door and told her to go away, because I didn't want her anywhere near my property. I would have cursed her out as well because I was really angry, but I refrained from doing it because of the little boy. I could hear her wailing outside my door for a couple of minutes after I shut it out, but I decided to ignore it. And once I made sure that the coast was clear, I went off to work. I tried really hard not to think about it because that would just weaken my resolve, and I couldn't afford to let that happen. I almost succeeded in forgetting that Angela had even showed up at my house, but as soon as I came back home from work, I received a call from my parents, demanding an explanation as to why I had turned her away. They told me that Angela had contacted them after I turned her away and shut the door in her face, and she had been devastated. My parents said that they were the ones who had given her my new address and told her to visit me since she was in the process of getting divorced from Sean and finally had a chance to make things right with me. They told me that Angela had reached out to them about a month ago, and this had been in the works for quite some time. My parents believed that it was about time that I thought about my kids, because my daughters needed a mother, and there was no better mother than Angela. So they decided that she deserved another chance and told her where to find me and what to say to me. I got really mad at them because it was not their place to forgive her and decide to give her another chance without even asking me if I would be okay with that. It could have been really bad if the kids had been at home, and it was really reckless of them to pull something like this, so I told them off. But they refused to acknowledge that they had made a mistake because they had helped me during my divorce by taking care of the kids. And even now, occasionally, they do look after the kids, and they believe that whether or not I wanted to patch up with Angela was up to me, that they had an equal right to decide what was best for the kids, and I couldn't take that away from them. I thought it was ridiculous of them to believe that, because at the end of the day, they were my daughters and not theirs. And while I respected them and would always be thankful for what they did for me during my divorce, I don't think it was their place to let Angela back into my life again. We got into a bit of a fight, but they told me that I was the one who was out of line here and was being selfish by not giving Angela another chance. They told me that they had done their due diligence to ensure that she was a different woman now and deserved to be a part of my daughter's lives. Even when I reminded them that she had signed her rights away, they said that it was insulting that I believed that they would put my daughters to me in harm's way and accused me of ruining their lives by being too arrogant to accept that they needed their mother. It's been a few days now, and I don't think I was out of line or selfish because I've thought about this a lot. I don't know if I should give my ex-wife a second chance at being a mother. Update 1. About a week has passed since Angela showed up at my door with her son, and recently I found out the truth about her relationship with my parents. It's honestly so disturbing that I don't even know where to begin, and I'm still struggling to process it myself. It's mind-boggling how all of them have betrayed me without batting an eye. Apparently, not only were they the ones who had told her my new address, but they had been in touch with her all along. I had cut her out of my life after the divorce, but they hadn't because they believed that she would come around at some point. They wouldn't talk much, only once a month maybe, but that was enough for me to feel betrayed. She had made Angela sign away her rights after she was served with the divorce papers, and had given her an ultimatum to either abandon her family and make a new life with him, or she could keep in touch with her kids and fight for their custody. But that would mean that she would have to leave him behind. It had been a difficult choice for her to make, according to my parents, but she ended up going with Sean to make a new family with him instead of sticking with the family that she already had. My parents said that Angela had contacted them shortly after I filed for divorce to tell them about her situation and ask them to help her because she wanted to still stay in contact with her kids. Privately, she had told them that she had been backed into a corner by both of us. In either way, she wouldn't be able to see her kids because I had been fighting for full custody with supervised visitation rights, while Sean had instructed her to abandon her kids altogether. Even if she did fight for custody and went against Sean, the chances of her getting partial custody were slim given the circumstances of our divorce and also her history of having issues controlling her temper. So fighting for custody seemed like a waste of her time and resources. There was a very real chance that she could lose both Sean and custody of our daughters in the end if she decided to fight, and that's before my parents came in. She met them in private and practically begged them to let her stay in touch with her daughters and help her out by acting as the bridge between them. She was aware that once she signed her rights away, she would not have any visiting rights, let alone supervision, but my parents would, and they planned on exploiting that. They successfully did so and fooled me for ages by going behind my back to allow Angela to meet our daughters. And they did so because Angela's situation struck a chord with them, and they realized that they couldn't in good conscience keep a mother apart from her kids. Stabbing their own son in the back for years, however, didn't hurt their conscience one bit. They told me that whenever I would drop our kids off at their house, they would invite Angela over and let her spend time with them. My kids never told me that they were meeting their mom because my parents would bribe them with toys and candy so they would keep their mouths shut about this. Anytime I would ask them about what they had done at their grandparents' house, my daughters would tell me that they played games with my grandparents and their friend. I always assumed that they must be talking about my parents' actual friends, whom I already knew, but apparently that's what my parents had told my daughters to refer to their mother in case I asked them about their day. I couldn't believe that my daughters had been lying to me as well, but I forgave them because they're just kids, and also because Angela and my parents had really manipulated and intimidated them into keeping quiet. After I learned the truth from my parents, when I asked my daughters if they had been meeting their mother behind my back, they started crying and told me that they couldn't tell me because they would be punished by God if they did so. Angela and my parents must have really drilled it into their heads that there would be dire consequences if they told me the truth, and that's why they had been so secretive and vague all along. I also felt like a terrible father for never asking my daughters which friends of my parents they were spending time with, because it just as easily could have been someone else, someone more dangerous than Angela, and I never would have found out. But I'm going to put an end to it now since I'm getting a restraining order against all of them. I already have written proof of this since my parents sent an email to me to tell me the truth a couple of days after my fight with them. They had believed that the email was going to make me realize how desperate Angela was to remain a mother to her daughters without losing the alleged love of her life, and that would somehow make me forgive everyone involved. But all that it did was make me realize that everyone here was a nasty little liar and I couldn't trust anybody anymore. It's also ironic how Angela signed away her parental rights and had to resort to meeting our kids in secret like it was a crime, all because Sean didn't want her to have any contact with her previous family, and he was supposed to be her one true love. But now even they were getting divorced, and all that turned out to be for nothing. They even had a son together, but according to my parents, Sean wanted nothing to do with her or his kid now because he had received a job offer and was moving away in a couple of months. Angela had started working again recently, and their son had started kindergarten here, so she didn't want to move with him, which is why they had been fighting for a long time. It had finally all come to a head 3 months ago when Sean told her that he was done and he was taking that job and moving out. He didn't have any interest in being a family man anymore because it clearly meant that he would have to sacrifice his own future and happiness just to make her happy, and he wasn't ready to do that. This was all meant to make me feel sorry for Angela, but the only purpose that it served was making me feel like justice had finally been served. I have already spoken to my lawyer, and the petition for the restraining orders has been filed. My daughters and I have also had a proper discussion about all of this, and I have told them that moving forward, they will never be seeing their grandparents or their mother again, and they seem to be okay with it for now. But we are still going to go to therapy and try to work things out, because I'm sure that this is going to be difficult for them and probably has been quite difficult for them for the past 5 years. But this all ends now. Update 2. Hey guys, thank you so much for all the concern and support here. I'm really grateful that so many people have been sending lovely messages and blessings to my daughters. My parents and Angela have been served with restraining orders and are supposed to appear in court in a few days. I don't know how they feel about any of this because I have blocked them on every possible platform, and I've also told my friends not to speak to them in case they contact them. I've also amped up the security around my house and have been working from home for a couple of days. I had spoken to my daughter's school authorities and told them about the situation. Initially, I didn't intend on letting them go to school for a few days, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of Angela and my parents. So now, teachers are supposed to keep an eye on them and not let anyone apart from me pick them up after school. I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that they can't get to us, because I'm sure that they will try. So far, it's been good, and I'm hoping that after we get that restraining order, they will still continue to stay away. Update 3. Hi. So this is going to be a really short update, but we got that restraining order, and for the next 5 years, all 3 of those maniacs are going to have to keep their distance from me and my daughters unless they want to face terrible consequences. Obviously, I'm still keeping all the security measures that I took in place for a while, because the last I saw them, they looked really pissed, and I don't want to risk anything. My daughters and I are attending regular family counseling sessions, and I think that we are going to make a lot of progress in the coming few months. We have already made considerable progress. Honestly, all I want now is for my daughters to be happy, and that's it. So please keep sending us your best wishes. We need it.